brand and strategy, and do we really think they're going to be able to implement this, would be sort of one side of it is sort of the content. The other side is just the presentation, so the verbal, how you guys interact as a team up here, and the written communication. So those would be the two main factors that we sort of go back and deliberate on. You guys met me, or many of you met me earlier, Andre James, partner of Bain and Company. I'll be one of the judges. I'll ask our other three judges to quickly introduce themselves, and then I'll sort of hand it over to you guys to get started.
I'm Andy Atkinson. I'm a professor here at UCLA. I'm also a Fluffy Bunny with a Fluffy Bunny track club. And I'm the director of our business economics major.
So my name is Onur Tamer. So I'm Turkish, as you can realize. I have a different accent. So I did the Turkey launch and Crossroads launch here in LA office of Riot Games. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. I'm an international publishing manager.
Hey guys, I think I met some of you last time. Manu Walker, former Bain guy, work on finance team at Riot. Excited to see what you guys have to say.
Great. We'll hand it over to you guys to get started.
All right. Hello. We're from Crossroads School. I'm Aviv Bar-Cohen.
I'm Ezra Kagan.
And our team here, we have EJ, Brandon, Cooper, Zoe, William, and Gage. This was really a group effort, but the two of us will be presenting today. So, as you know, Bain and Riot posed us with a question.
And that question was, should Riot Games launch League of Legends into India? Now, we've done extensive research, data analysis, and after a lot of hard work from this whole team, I think we have an answer that can make Riot even more profitable going forward.
The answer to that question is that Riot Games should launch in India in the beginning of 2015. A multitude of factors came into this decision, but for us the most important were as follows. That India has a high growth and attractive online gaming market that's going to get bigger and bigger in years to come, and there's an increased broadband access and penetration in India. By 2015, there'll be plenty of broadband access so people can play a game like League of Legends in India. There's currently minimal competition in the market, so League of Legends could launch and take up a serious portion of the market. It's a relatively low cost of entry, and there's high potential revenue, meaning that League of Legends could have plenty of profit moving forward in the future.
So today we're going to start by talking about the basic factors that make the Indian market what it is. Then we're going to move on to Riot's ability to win. So what are your revenues going to look like? What are the costs going to look like? And ultimately, what are the profits going to look like? Then we're going to talk about scenarios. So why 2015 as opposed to 2014 or 2016? And then we're finally going to talk about some next steps. So let's jump right in and talk about the Indian market. Now the Indian market has been growing at an impressive rate as of late. According to PwC, revenues in the total market will reach upwards of $650 million by 2016. Now much of this revenue is driven by mobile and console gaming, but the online gaming market is nothing to turn your nose at. The online gaming market will represent about $75 million in total revenue in 2015. And it's growing at a compound annual growth rate over this period of about 15.4%, which is on par with the growth rate around the rest of the globe. Now, other key factors to know about the Indian market are, one, roughly 80% of gamers come from the top 8 metrics. And this is good news for a company like Riot that depends so heavily on events and word of mouth to generate buzz about League of Legends. And two, roughly half the gamers, according to the Internet and Mobile Association of India, are college students. And what this means is we're seeing the first real generation of gamers in India. And once you become a gamer, you don't stop. So over the next decade, we're going to see the gaming population in India grow by an impressive factor. But perhaps the most important driving factor in the Indian gaming market is increased broadband penetration. Over the past few years, we've seen a broadband boom in India. Whereas penetration was about 1.4% in 2007, according to PwC, it will reach upwards of 12.7% in 2015. And the 12.7% isn't excellent, but in a country of 1 billion people, it's substantial. According to PwC, approximately 31 million households will have access to broadband in 2015. And we even have reason to believe that that estimate may be low. According to the Boston Consulting Group, around 240 million Indians will have access to the internet in 2015. The Indian government just took on a public works project that aims to expand broadband access to around 175 million Indians. This means that more than ever, Indians will have the basic tools to become a part of the online gaming market. And in the future, we're going to see a lot more Indians play online games.
So when deciding whether Riot Games should launch League of Legends in India, we decided to look at a couple different countries that Riot has launched in the last 2 years and see what a League of Legends country looks like. So we looked at Thailand, Turkey, and Brazil. So starting with Thailand, they have relatively low broadband penetration at only 20%, and only 4 million broadband households, but an enormous online gaming market of almost $170 million. It's quite obvious why League of Legends would work in a country like Thailand, because clearly the Thai love to play online games and they are willing to spend money on online games. In a market like Turkey and a market like Brazil, it's much smaller in terms of online gaming, and there are much fewer broadband households than in India right now. But there's a much higher broadband penetration. That means that these markets are a little bit safer to launch into because a higher percentage of the population has access to the game and could potentially become rioters. India in 2014 has still a relatively low broadband penetration and even smaller broadband households. By 2015, we believe that the combination of a $75 million online gaming market and increased broadband penetration will make India a market with huge potential. These other markets, Brazil and Turkey, are safer markets to launch into, but we believe India has much higher potential going forward. These are some quantitative factors that make India an attractive market, but let's talk about some qualitative ones. The three important aspects for us when looking at the Indian market would there be any regulatory barriers that would keep League of Legends out of India? Would there be any cultural opposition to the game? And is there any major competition? The answer to all three of these questions is no. Right now, there are no regulatory barriers or internet restrictions that could keep a game with fantasy and violence from being played in India. There's also no cultural opposition to a game like League of Legends because many of the same video games that we play in the United States are being played in India right now. They play games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, Max Payne that are high violence and filled with fantasy. And one of the biggest Western movies in India last year was Wrath of the Titans, a movie filled with monsters and violence similar to League of Legends. In terms of competition, there are no other major MMOGs launched in India right now, so we believe that if League of Legends were to launch in India in 2015, they could take up a significant portion of the online gaming market, considering that there's no major competition like Dota 2 that they would have to compete with.
So now that we've talked about the basic facts of the Indian market, let's move on to Riot's ability to win. So Riot's first concern when moving into India has to be, how many players are we going to get? And so the way we determine this is we started with broadband households, 31 million according to PwC in 2015. And we assume that there's one internet user per household, which is a low estimate, but it's better safe than sorry in this case. Now we have two studies, one from the Internet and Mobile Association of India and one from Boston Consulting Group, that indicate about 47.5% of active internet users in India are gamers. If we apply that statistic to the 31 million broadband households, what we get are 15 million possible gamers with access to broadband in their home. If we assume that max, Riot can take 10% of that market, we're saying that Riot can take another 1.5 million gamers and add them to the League of Legends user base, which represents an increase of about 5% of your total gaming population today. Furthermore, we believe that Riot will take about 1 to 3% of this gaming population in its first year, which means 180,000 to 500,000 new players year one.
Having a bunch of players is great, but if there's not spending any money on the game, then it's not really worth launching in India. To figure out the amount of money that people will be spending in India on League of Legends, we actually asked current League of Legends players in India. There's a Facebook group called League of Legends India with over 1,000 members in it right now. And we took a Facebook poll and asked them how much they spend each month on League of Legends. And the results were as follows. About 60 to 70% of Indian League of Legends gamers don't spend any money on the game right now. They take it as a free game and they play it as a free game. The next 3 to 5% of players spend between $1 and $5 a month. 5 to 10% of players are spending between $5 and $10 a month. And another 5 to 10% are spending over $10 a month. We even had some people who said they spend over $25 a month on League of Legends right now in India. Compiling all this data, we found that your average Indian player we can expect to spend about $1 a month or $12 a year. A game like Zynga is another freemium type game. A company like Zynga has freemium type games that has already seen some success in India. They say, according to them, they have over 5 million players in India right now. And we have heard that they get, we have Ezra's brother worked at Zynga, and they said that they get 3 3 to 5% of their user base makes up the majority of their revenue. We found that a much bigger percentage of people are spending money on League of Legends because it's a much more time-committed, competitive game that you're willing to spend more money on. Using that 1 to 3% first-year estimate, we found that Riot can expect a year one monthly run rate at the end of year one of $180,000 to $500,000.
Well, what's it going to cost Riot? Obviously, Riot wouldn't want to launch in India if the costs were so exorbitant that they couldn't make a profit. But what we found is that Riot, if they launch in India, would have a year one cost from anywhere at a low end of $800,000 to a high end of $1.1 million. Here's how we got that figure. We started with employees. We looked on Riot's website and we saw that they have about 40 employees in every international office. So we cross-referenced that with median pay for Indian workers who are software engineers, customer service specialists, marketing specialists, etc. And what we found is that it would cost about $300,000 a year to host an office in India. To house those workers in a nice office in, say, Mumbai, it would cost another $110,000 to $132,000. The way we determined cost for servers was a bit more complex, and we provided an addendum slide if you guys would like to look at it later. But what you need to know is it would cost around $240,000 to $360,000 to host a good player experience for League of Legends players in India. Now this cost is variable, but if League of Legends has so many players in India that it needs more servers, that's a good problem. Now for events, we use a big extravagant Indian wedding as a comparable, because we know that Riot likes to host big events to generate word of mouth and buzz about its game. And what we found is that it would cost anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 a year to host 2 events. Add on miscellaneous overhead costs, because we know Riot likes to keep its employees comfortable, and voice acting costs, which are marginal, but if Riot wants to translate the game into Hindi, are necessary, and we've got a cost from anywhere from $800,000 to $1.1 million year one, or cost per player of $1.60 to about $5.80.
So let's talk about potential profit in year one. To calculate this, we used our low end of 1% of the online gaming market that Riot could attract in year one, and a high end of 3% of the market. On that lower end, we had a potential revenue of $1.3 million with $900,000 in cost, leaving Riot with an operating profit of $400,000. Although this isn't substantial, for a relatively weak launch only attracting 1% of the market, it would still leave Riot profitable in India. A really successful launch where they came in and attracted 3% of the market would generate $4.7 million in revenue and have a little bit of a higher cost of $1.1 million. This is higher because the more players you have, the more you have to spend on servers, leaving Riot with an operating profit of $3.6 million. This is pretty substantial even for a high-growth company like Riot.
So why 2015? If the Indian gaming market is so attractive, why not just launch as early as possible? Well, what we found by using the same method of determining profit is that if Riot launched in India in 2014, they would be making anywhere from $0 to $2.7 million in year one. But for a high-growth company like Riot, making a $0 profit on a $1 million investment is simply unacceptable. The opportunity cost is way too high. There are better places that Riot could be investing that money and getting a greater return on that money. And if it seems like getting in the market a bit earlier would put Riot at an advantage, that's not actually the case, because the market isn't yet saturated enough to sustain a high-growth, very successful launch. If Riot were to launch in 2014, there's a greater chance that the launch actually doesn't succeed and that you don't gain closer to 3% of that market. We estimate that if Riot launches in 2014, they're more likely to get 1% of that market and put them in a bad position going forward in India.
So the big differences between 2014 and 2015 are as so. The online gaming market is going to grow, according to PwC, almost $9 million, and we believe at least 5 million more households will have access to broadband. That increase in people who can play League of Legends with that broadband access is going to lead to at least 30 to 100,000 more players upon launch in 2015 versus 2014. That leads to that operating profit, which we discussed before, between $400,000 and $3.6 million. In 2015, with a lot more people with internet access, we think that a launch could take off in India, much more so than it could in 2014, and Riot could actually take up a bigger portion of a bigger market in 2015.
And why not wait till 2016? Well, there are 3 main reasons. One, you forsake the players who are already in India now. Riot's first principle of their mission statement is player experience first. And by waiting, we're throwing those players under a bit of a bus. Two, you open up the market to competition. Games like Dota 2 could come in and take up some of the market share of what's going to be one of the most attractive and lucrative markets in the globe in the next few years. And finally, if Riot waits until 2016 to launch, they miss out on profits that are right there for the taking in 2015. And ultimately, for a company, that's never a good business decision.
So going forward, before the beginning of 2015, Riot has to do a few things before launching. And these are what we think Riot's next steps should be. Right now, all of our data for 2015 in terms of broadband access and penetration in the online gaming market are projections. We think that Riot should track broadband development and access on a quarterly basis to make sure that these projections are being met. If the actual broadband access is running behind and isn't meeting these projections, we think that Riot should either hold off on the delay, possibly until 2016, or until these projections are actually met.
But if the projections are met, then Riot should absolutely go ahead and start beta testing in late 2014 to plan for a launch in 2015. Remember, increased broadband access is going to make the Indian market incredibly attractive over the next few years. Riot can launch in India with relatively low costs and come out with a high profit, and monopolize and take a stranglehold on one of the markets that's going to become one of the most attractive in the world over the next few years. Thank you so much for listening to us. It's been a pleasure. Are there any questions?
Sure, I'll start out. So, nice job, guys. Couple of questions. One is, you mentioned earlier that there's really no competition for a game like League of Legends in India today. Why do you think that is? I mean, if the market, is somewhat attractive, what are these online games that people are playing today? Why hasn't something like League of Legends into the market?
When we're talking about competition, the biggest competition for League of Legends within the genre is Dota 2. If we talk about monthly user numbers, they actually have a tenth of League of Legends monthly user bases. So even on a global scale, they're really not that competitive, especially in India though. India doesn't really have that many active Dota 2 players. If we saw through the Facebook group, there are actually a lot of local Indian tournaments being run out of pocket by just local fans, and that really isn't the case for Dota 2 or any other competitor. If we look outside of the genre, like microtransactions on phones and such, those aren't really direct competitors because League of Legends is a free-to-play game, so it does offer a lot of incentive just to come in and try it. It attracts a lot of users that way instead. So there, other games outside the genre don't really compete with League of Legends very well.
I have some questions. Two facts in your presentation that I sometimes lost track of. One is, I think you said there are 8 cities where the broadband users are, and then you were proposing 2 events a year. Wouldn't you want to, how are you going to market to 8 cities with 2 events a year? Don't we need to blow up those marketing costs?
From looking at Riot's original structure for how they were organizing their events, it was like 5 events for the whole world, 5 major events that lead to like qualifiers and regionals and then a finals in LA. So not every location just gets to be represented. So I would think that you'd want 1, maybe 2 major events in India, in Indian cities, and hopefully to reach as many people as possible, but it wouldn't be worth many more events.
And the other question I had is, you started off saying, I think like half the gamers are college students. In India, do college students live at home or do they live on campus?
Well, a lot of those students live on campus.
So then, would the relevant broadband numbers be how many Indian university dorms have broadband?
Well, here's the thing. Our whole presentation kind of hinges on the idea that a lot of the info that is out there on broadband households is actually a little bit low. So what we believe is, if there are more broadband users out there than we have, that's only good news for Riot. That means that Riot has more potential to be profitable going forward. That means that Riot has a larger user base to draw from.
The other point about the college students is that India, as we saw, is pretty new to the internet, and we're seeing that these college students are probably the youngest generation of people who grew up with the internet, or possibly had access to it as home. I don't think that the almost 50% or almost half of the gamers being college students will stay as it is, as these young younger kids get older, I feel that the market will diversify into a broader age range as people who grow up with the internet get older.
So I have a question quickly. So I think it's so you guys did a really good job with all that research and everything. It's nice, but there are some parts missing. So any of you guys play League of Legends? Okay, so where do you get the information, or how do you interact with people?
Mostly through forums, personally, be it Reddit or the official League of Legends forums.
Exactly. So community is the main driver for us. So what we do is we try to do the best service for the players. So profitability is always the second step. So if you don't have the community, it's very difficult to serve the players. So it will be better if we could see more a little bit about what kind of communities exist in India, or whether Reddit is big, or whether like any communication channel specifically to India would help Riot Games to drive this launch.
Well, I think that Facebook group that we found with over 1,000 members in it it's a really active group. These people, they're on it all the time. They even host their own tournaments. So I think there already is a bit of an online community talking about League of Legends. And I think going through that and maybe even connecting with some of the people in that group, which we tried to do, they could help you with that in getting the larger community and player experience.
And so what is the population of India?
1 point.
Something
Yeah.
huge, right?
It's
They
huge,
have
it's
like
enormous
1,000 likes on Facebook. And Turkey has like something like 60 million. And the Facebook page for League of Legends in Turkey has almost 200,000 likes. So it's not a good sign for like, I mean, we can look at the Facebook and say that India has a League of Legends community, an existing community that we can serve. Yeah, rather than looking into profitability, I would like to understand what kind of opportunities we have towards players. What is their expectations from us? Yeah. Maybe that part was missing, but obviously only one guy in your team is playing the game, so it's very difficult to make that judgment, but yeah.
Is that, is the Turkey number, the likes on the Facebook page, is that post Riot coming in, or is that pre-Riot?
Before Riot coming in, it was something like 80 to 100.
I'll say this wasn't like a like, this was a group that you have to request to join.
Yeah.
It was a much more,
It's
these are, yeah,
It's a closed
yeah.
this is a closed community of over 1,000 people who are very serious about the
They actually
game.
talk to each other, it's not
Yeah.
just a like page.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, so I don't think that's the greatest metric.
Good yeah, not even comparison.
So one question I had was that I think I get the thesis around the evolution of the attractiveness of the Indian market that you're talking about, but and maybe this is kind of maybe this sort of dominoes off of Omer's point a little bit, but I guess one question I had for you guys, right, is that do you guys put any thought into the fact that this is an incredibly nascent market as far as hardcore gaming goes, and thinking more broadly and more long term about sort of, perhaps the company that Riot wants to evolve into and wants to be, and sort of how the company should think about India overall, even outside of League of Legends?
Well, we definitely think that India going forward is going to be a market that Riot needs to be in. It's as you said, it's 1 billion people. It's an enormous market, and this internet access has always been the problem there. I mean, for such a big population, there's not that many people with internet. But going forward, I think India could be one of Riot's main markets. It's a huge, and there are extreme gamers there. The thing is, because internet is so new, I don't think enough people have had opportunity to play games like League of Legends. And we think by 2015 and going forward that there will be enough people and there will be a serious gaming community in India.
All right, we should probably wrap there. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, guys.